Let me just say, we usually only hold an hour, but I know that several people, we've been having several people come out and talk, because toward the end of the year, we don't meet because of the holidays and all that. So our last group that came out is planning, Ron, and this is our last group that came out tonight. So, anybody hungry yet? There's pizza and wings over here. Audrey will be more than happy to pass it out. So, and I know the city brought a lot of people, so Ron, or you want to introduce us?
Sure, happy to introduce my team. So, go ahead. Anybody need any pizza? I wanted to take a step back and talk about who we are. And when I say we, my team. So I am very fortunate to have the pleasure of working with Ron Mangita, who some of you have known Ron. Ron has worked for the city of Denton going on 17 years. I also have Cameron Robertson, so sorry. Some of you know Cameron because working with Reverend Logan on the street sign toppers, which we're very excited about this being finished and being able to roll this out. I have Haley Zagurski in the back. So Haley is our assistant planning director. If she just would have told Scott McDonald, yes, I wouldn't be standing here, but it's a long story. So anyway, I have Mia Hines also on our team. Mia's been with us less than a year now. Julie Wyatt is also on my team, and Julie collectively, she has 2 tours of duty with the city of Denton. So we think she's about 8 or 9 years, and so she brings a lot of history as well. And then I have Pritam Deshmukh, which some of you had the opportunity of meeting last month. Who's part of the team as well. Pritam has been in multiple departments, seeing the city inside and out in various capacities. Been with the city at least 5 years, if not longer. So, and myself, I've been with the city. It'll be a year come September 1st. So I've been trying to learn all things Denton. I know there's a lot of things that I don't know, but I am very fortunate to work with a wonderful team who knows a lot. They know so much more than I do, and I can help put you in contact with folks to help answer questions. But I want you to know that I would encourage you, please use us as a resource, because one of the things that we are fortunate with being planners is a lot of times we have to know a lot about a lot of things, and we know we're not experts in all things. But because we work with so many people in so many different groups within the City of Denton organization, we are able to put people in contact with the right people that they need to be conversing with. So we may not have the answer, but we know who to get you to that answer. So that's why I wanted to introduce my team so you have an opportunity to start put faces with names. I would highly encourage you, please get to know my team. Please use them as a resource. You may have an issue with respect to a drainage issue on your property. I can assure you we really don't deal with drainage, but we know people who deal with drainage, right? And we can put you in contact with those folks. So, but I wanted to share with you, so the planning team is part of a department that's called Development Services. Some of you may know where we're located. We're at 401 North Elm Street. We're a former grocery store. I think Ms. Collette told me it used to be a Kroger. It's a great example of what we talk about adaptive reuse, because we have a building that was able to be repurposed. We were able to remodel it to be able to help meet the functions and needs of our development activity that we have here within the city. But the development services team is housed within that building. Again, we're a department of the city of Denton, so we work for the residents of Denton, as well as the businesses, other property owners, stakeholders within the community. There's actually 5 teams that make up the development services team. One is building safety. And so when I think of building safety, they issue things like permits, and permits protect people, buildings, property. We also our building safety team also includes our health and food team. So we might not be able to tell you whether or not the food is to your liking when it comes from a food safety perspective, but what we are interested in is making sure that the hot foods are supposed to be at a certain temperature or higher, that the cold foods are supposed to be at a certain temperature or lower, and to be able to make sure that we're protecting the public health safety from that perspective. Health also involves swimming pools. If people have swimming pools, we want to make sure that those swimming pools have the correct safety equipment associated with them. The permits, if you decide to do some remodeling in your house, some of that remodeling, or let's say I had to have the main water line to my house repaired previously, and my plumber did not want to pull a permit, and I said, no, that's not how this works. I work for a municipality, you will go pull a permit. And the reason why I make sure that he pulls that permit is, one, I want to make sure that that contractor who's doing the work knows what they're doing, because those contractors typically have to be registered with the city. And two, I want to make sure that the work that they're doing in my home, specifically with my main water line that serves my house, that it was built in accordance with the city's code requirements related to that. So that permit helps me as a homeowner be protected by the contractor that's doing work within my community. So when I say, I did tell, I was like, he wouldn't argue with me about it at the manhole. I'm like, okay, no. I'm like, into that conversation, you will go pull a permit or I'll find a different plumber. So, in addition to the building safety team, we have the planning team, which I'll get more detail about us in a moment. We also have the real estate team. The real estate team assists in with property acquisition, whether it be for city facilities or if we need easements, to be able to assist some of our other teams like Dead Municipal Electric, or maybe it's our capital engineering team. They're having to do some roadway improvements, or they're doing some drainage improvements, or a sewer line or a water line, and they need an easement. That's where our real estate team helps us in that regard. Our facilitation team, they really help with development projects and being able to help a development get from starting at A all the way to Z. So Mr. Tarwater will get to know a development facilitator very well if his project is successful in moving through all of the city's approval processes. We also have our business services and our process improvement team. They really provide support not only to the other 4 divisions, but also look to where we can improve processes within the city organization, especially where my department is in, or where the development services department is involved. But our customers, they include yourselves as residents. They're also business owners within our community. They're property owners who may not necessarily be residents or be business owners within the community. Yes, we do work with developers. Sometimes developers get the ugly stink eye type situation, but they serve a role within our community. And we are charged with working with them because of what we do. And the developers that develop within our community, many times what they're doing is their projects will bring additional residents to our community. They'll bring additional businesses to our community. So that's why we do work with them to make sure that what they're building within the community is in compliance with any city's ordinances and requirements that we have in place. So we're on the next slide. So now I get to brag about the planning team. So I have a wonderful team of individuals that I work with. When somebody asks me what I do, I say, well, I'm a city planner. And they say, well, what does that mean? I'm like, well, so I help plan cities. And they stop and think about it, and they're like, you plan cities? And I'm like, well, yes, there are so many aspects that go into planning a community. And one of the key things that we work with is land use. How is property going to be used within the community today? But also we have to think about the future. What is our community going to be like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Areas that we want to influence change. How do we help them influence change in a positive way, in a manner that we are wanting to have happen within the community? We are tasked with implementing the policies and the ordinances that are adopted by City Council. City Council, at the end of the day, they're in the decision-making role. So if they say, Tina, we want this to be happening within the community and we're going to approve this ordinance, then my job and my team's job is to go in to implement those policies and the ordinances in place. If you don't like an ordinance, then one of the responses that you might get from our team is, well, you can go talk to your council member and see about getting that ordinance changed. Because at the end of the day, we make recommendations to them, and so that they can make informed decisions on behalf of the community. But ultimately, you as residents and property owners elect your council members. So we are here to be able to do the work and implement the policies and the ordinance requirements that are adopted by our city leaders, whether that's our current council, our previous councils, future councils. At the end of the day, they're the ones that set that policy direction and have the final say when ordinances get adopted. So much of what planners are known for, and sometimes we get criticized for this, is our current planning functions. And so when we talk about current planning, that's zoning and development review. When I say zoning, it's much different than what Dr. Wilson talked about. Dr. Wilson talked about when they're rezoning areas of the city to identify which parts of the community will go to certain schools, right? So they'll identify an area, there's schools within that area, your kids go to those areas. Zoning for us from a land use perspective is the city is divided up into a variety of different areas, and each of those areas have different zoning district designations. So whether it's single family residential or commercial or mixed neighborhood or light industrial, and those areas throughout the community will then tell folks what they can do with their property and how they can go about doing it. So the zoning that my team deals with is land use. It's not about students and what schools they go to, although that's part of our analysis. We do coordinate with the school district, especially when we have development projects coming in. If they're residential, we're interested in knowing, okay, with this project being done, what attendance zone will these students go to, and do you have capacity within the schools to be able to accommodate that development? Because ultimately, they have the responsibility of educating all the students within our community. So when I say our zoning is different, then hopefully that helps illustrate on how that is. In zoning, again, zoning tells property owners what they can do and how they can go about doing it. So if I want to build a restaurant within the city of Denton, I need to find the zoning districts that allow for restaurant uses by right or with approval of a specific use permit. But it'll tell me these are the areas of the community that I can go build my restaurant by right. And then, oh, by the way, if you want to do a restaurant, these are all the additional requirements you have to meet. It has to be set back from the front property line so far, from the back property line so far. It has to have so many parking spaces. It can't exceed a certain height. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm thinking about this area that's right over there, that big warehouse that just came down over there, you know, remember that over on Sycamore? You remember all of that? That steel mill? So, if you all have any questions about something like that, these are the group of people that, even if you call me and ask me, I will say, let me get back in touch with you. I will be calling them anyway. So you all can definitely go directly to them and get some, they want you to call them.
Absolutely.
Keep you filled in on what's going on.
You can call us directly. You do not have to go through a council member or a planning and zoning commission member to learn about what's happening with a particular property. We also have on our city's website, if you like to get on the computer and search around, we also have an interactive map that also has what projects are currently under review and I believe possibly under construction, where you can get that information as well. But you're happy to use this as a resource.
Oh, and I just want to add one more thing. You all remember when I was telling you guys about these white signs that'll show up on the edge of the road that'll say public hearing, and it's some numbers and things like that on there. That information comes from this office.
Right.
So you all, if you're curious about what's happening over in that area, you see it, just
You
pick
call
up,
us.
call them and find out.
Call
what's
us. I saw a sign that was over on this street. I was driving by. If you happen to catch that number,
Yeah.
it'll probably say Z, and then it'll have 22 because of the year that we're in, right? And then there will be a number that follows that. That helps us narrow it down, but usually we can figure it out by if you tell us come in the general location and you're happy to contact us. So, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question. Two things happen right in our area here in Southern City. The well that they had right across from Gorge Road Lane, whatever happened to it? It was capped at one time.
The well over on Woodrow Lane.
It's gone. And the other question
Okay.
is, the gas company was right down from the police station. They done moved all of those equipment from there.
Okay.
So, are they coming this way on that day, what the admin's company was?
You know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know the specifics on that, but if you'd like, let's get together afterwards, and either one of the folks on my team might know, or we can get more information from you and then follow up with you on that. But that one I don't know off the top of my head, so. So, moving on, so I talked about current planning. Oh, the one other thing I'll mention is, like I said, sometimes we get criticized because, oh, well, you're representing the developer. No, we're not representing the developer. We're helping the developer get through the city's entitlement phase process. We do make recommendations to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council when it deals in matters of zoning. Also with specific use permits. We are paid to provide professional recommendations. If the project is consistent with the policies that the city has adopted and the ordinances that we have in place, then my team in all likelihood is going to be recommending approval. Sometimes we're not the most popular by issuing a recommendation for approval, but again, our evaluation is based upon the policies that the city has adopted and the ordinances that we have in place. If they're not consistent, then in all likelihood, we'll be making a recommendation for denial to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council for their consideration as they evaluate the information that we've given them. Again, my team's whole goal is to be able to provide our elected and appointed officials with the best information possible so that they can make the most informed decision. At the end of the day, we may even professionally agree to disagree, but I know if my team has done their job and given their best professional recommendation to the elected and appointed officials to make an informed decision, that's what's most important, and we've done what we've been tasked with to be able to support the community. So I want to shift the focus from long-range planning, or excuse me, from current planning to long-range planning. So long-range planning, or also known as comprehensive planning, is when we're thinking about what do we want our community to be for the future. How do we envision an area redeveloping, or we want to see an area have its culture and existing characteristics preserved, or identifying areas where we want to influence change. All of that comes from thinking longer term, right? So hence why it's called long-range planning. How many of you have heard of the Denton 2040 comprehensive plan? Sure. Okay, so that whole project that we've worked on, that is a 20-year document, thinking about the evolution of our community in the future. And so as we worked on that with the Planning and Zoning Commission, the City Council, they were tasked with thinking about, okay, we had some tough challenges or tough conversations about, do we plan for roadways within certain parts of our community? If we don't plan for roadways, what is the implication associated with it? What kind of land uses do we want to see within our community that we want to help steer and shift towards? Do we have land that we want to see preserved within the community? And we had a lot of conversations regarding preservation of land. Those kind of conversations, bigger picture, high level, that's what all goes into long-range planning and sets the path forward. Zoning is the tool that implements the comprehensive plan. So when I say we're looking to see, okay, when we have requests come through, if they're consistent, then that's how. Then we're comparing it with our policies that have been adopted. Neighborhood planning. Sometimes we get criticized that we don't do enough neighborhood planning, and neighborhood planning is a product of comprehensive planning. When I mentioned area plans is squeezed in there. So area plans kind of bridges that gap also between the comprehensive plan and neighborhood planning efforts. But neighborhood planning, some of the more fine-grained neighborhood planning that we do is the historic preservation, and Cameron is our historic preservation officer. That's when we've got some design guidelines, or in some cases we have districts that are established that have ordinance requirements that have to adhere to, or that projects have to adhere to. And be evaluated based upon. And so that's when we work on our historic preservation. We also have the downtown design guidelines that were established. Again, that is specific to the downtown area, protecting the character of the downtown. And so we put some guidelines in place to be able to help facilitate the eclecticness that downtown is today. Our community improvement services. So this one I have in italicized because while this is not housed within the planning department, we do support our community services team with the programs that they work on that helps with sustaining our neighborhoods in the longer term. We do a lot of behind the scenes work. Transportation planning, Pre-Tam. Again, some of you met him at the last meeting. Pre-Tam has joined us and is part of our transportation planning team. This is something that we now have housed within the planning department because so that we can think that bigger picture and think about our roadway network, where we want to make certain improvements. We work wholeheartedly with Becky DeVinny and her team with capital projects and engineering with the roadway improvements that they do. Tree preservation. It's very important to this community to preserve its trees. And so we have a very robust tree preservation ordinance. And so my team is responsible for being able to enforce that ordinance and making sure that development projects comply with tree preservation requirements. And then we have the special projects. As I mentioned earlier, as planners, we know a lot about a lot of things. And sometimes the city manager is trying to needs to have something done and she's not quite sure what department it lands in. 9 times out of 10 it's going to be on the planning team just because she trusts us, but she knows we'll know how to be able to get it done. And then also we do a lot of collaboration with other agencies. So Dr. Wilson, who was here earlier, he talked about the number of schools that needs to be brought online by the year 2024 with respect to the elementary schools. We do a lot of work. Julie, I believe, has a quarterly meeting with the school district, and we work with them to understand, okay, where their needs are, especially in areas of our community that may be growing. If they are interested in acquiring school sites, then we work with them and we try to put the developers in contact with the school district representatives and help facilitate that connection happening. So I share that with you so that you all see we're not just the current planners. There is so much more that we do, which is a good segue into then I want to talk about the area plans. And this is the whole reason why we're here this evening. Next slide, Ron. So one of the things coming out of our Denton 2040 comprehensive plan that was approved earlier this year was to start focus on doing some area plans. Some folks may refer to them as small area plans. We've dropped the word small on the front end because some of these areas, in my opinion, are not exactly small. And so, so hence why council has tasked us with this next step of implementing some area plans. The whole aspect about an area plan is it allows us to do a deeper dive within an area, and it allows us to be able to establish a vision for the area. This area plan that we're going to embark on later this year, it could have a 20-year horizon, and we're asking people to think long-term about how do we want this area of our community either to remain the same, evolve, or be a combination of both, right? And so it also, by establishing a vision for the area, it gives us the opportunity for the community to be able to have a story to tell. This is what we want to have happen within our community. This is what we don't want to have happen within our community. And so it allows us then to be able to communicate to folks such as like a Mr. Tarwater, who's interested in coming and investing within the community and is looking for property. We can tell Mr. Tarwater, no, you don't need to be looking in this part of this community because the community has told us they want this to be X. You're doing Y. So your Y is not going to fit over here in X. But this area over here wants to have Y happening. So you need to be working in that area. So it allows us to be able to facilitate those conversations and be able to tell folks like Mr. Tarwater, here's where you need to be focusing your efforts. The area plan will also deal with land use recommendations. Again, as I talked about city planning, we're dealing with what's the highest and best use of land is typically the phrase that's used of how we want to see an area evolve or remain the same for the longer term. The area plan will also address community character, urban design, we talk about a lot of times the public realm. What is the feeling that we have within that community, that sense of place that we're trying to generate and create within a community? And so that's really important as we work on these area plans. We also look at infrastructure recommendations. We're also doing an area plan in another part of the community where infrastructure is a challenge. And so we're having to look at what are roadway needs, utility needs. We'll be having those same conversations in Southeast Denton. What are our infrastructure needs? Are there certain, have we thought about with some of our roadways? I know the last meeting I was at, there were a lot of conversations regarding we've got speeding happening on these certain roadways. Well, maybe we need to take a look at that roadway, look at the cross-section of it, and see, are there things that we can do to be able to improve that roadway so that it naturally slows folks down, right? And so when we work on this area plan, those are the kind of conversations that we have. Next slide. Another thing that area plans do, one of the key things when we start out with is we assess the existing conditions. So we want to be able to respond to community concerns. We want to be able to listen, and we want to hear from you of what are the concerns that you have within your community. We're also looking at existing property values. We're looking at where vacant parcels are. We're looking at has this area not evolved due to what challenge that exists? Maybe it's because there are drainage issues within the area, and so hence why we haven't been able to address certain vacant properties within a neighborhood. We're interested in identifying also what are the needs of the community. At the last meeting, and actually it was when we were working on the Woodrow specific use permit, one of the things that I heard at the last Senate meeting, but also when we did the public hearing on that, was that we need a grocery store. Well, let's talk about why this area hasn't attracted a grocery store. What needs to change in order to be able to have a grocery store begin to look at this area of our community? Or if there are other businesses that we're trying to attract to the community, what needs to occur in order to be able to help that business be able to locate here? So when we talk about identifying community needs, it's hearing those types of needs from you all, because my next bullet point is public engagement. One of the key aspects associated with us doing the work on this plan is you all participating in this planned effort. There are going to be many times you may get a letter from the city of Denton, and if it says planning department, I don't want you to throw that in the trash. I want you to open that envelope. I want you to read that flyer, that newsletter, whatever that we have in there, because most likely I'm inviting you to come participate in a neighborhood meeting. It could be that I'm asking Mr. Johnson here to be able to be on this meeting agenda as well. We know you have other business to be able to take care of during your SED meetings, so we may host a separate meeting outside of SED. But when I'm sending you flyers, or you might get something in with your water bill, or you see an email blast come through if you like using technology a lot, and I'm asking you to please come and participate in our community engagement in our meetings that we're having regarding this area plan, I'm looking for folks who want to participate, who want to offer constructive feedback as part of this process. We can continue and have some side conversations and stir the pot on things and not make any progress, and if we don't make progress, that doesn't help us, right? So when I say I want folks that are willing to provide good constructive feedback on how we help move the community forward, or how we preserve existing character, or identifying areas where we want change to occur or areas where we don't want change, I have to get that information from you all, because I can't make that decision for you on your behalf if I don't hear from you. We will partner with the consultant team to be able to help us in these engagement efforts and be able to put this plan together. They can't make informed decisions and recommendations to me as the planning director and my team, and ultimately to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council for consideration if I don't have your participation. Because then we would just be guessing as to what we think the community wants, and that's the last thing we need to be doing, is guessing as to what the community wants. So hence why I want you to know my face, I want you to get to know my team, so that we can have a partnership as we work on this project together. At times, we may agree to disagree, and that's okay. And we'll talk about more of that later when we work on this particular project. But again, we are here to work with you to figure out what is important to you for the community of Sedna. Another key thing that we'll do as related to this project is we will work on what we consider the boundaries of this planned area should be. I will be interested in knowing what do you consider the boundaries of Southeast Denton? And then knowing that that's a much larger area, then we will probably look at breaking that down into further subgroups. Mr. Hunt has been working with the neighborhood and identified the 6 neighborhoods. So we've got to start, right? We know where these 6 neighborhoods are, but we have other areas within the community. Maybe we have some areas that are more commercial nodes. We have obviously our residential neighborhoods, and then figuring out what the areas are in between. Ron, next slide, please. So again, area plan is a specialized plan for a given area. It is going to allow us to do a deeper dive analysis compared to what we have. It allows us to be able to do deeper dive analysis compared to what we did at the comprehensive plan. Again, it's establishing a vision for the area based upon the community input. The other thing that I will point out is, so this document, I would love to say I produced something bright and shiny that makes a lot of noise that I could take to community meetings, like a new fire truck or a new police car that kids can climb all over, and it has lots of flashy lights and bells and whistles. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm gonna borrow your piece of paper here, Ms. Johnson. What I produce is a paper document that has some thickness compared to this piece of paper, but it's a document, right? It'll have a series of policies, goals, objectives that we as a community want to work on for the given study area that we've done, in this case, Southeast Denton. Also included with that is going to be a list of action items that will be tied to our vision for the area. It will be tied to the goals and policies that we have for the area. So it will not have fancy bells and whistles. It'll have a lot of great looking maps within it and resources and a list of action items. But that's very important, because then that helps lay the foundation for the next steps that we need to take. Again, whether it's somebody like a Mr. Tarwater coming in looking at potentially doing a project, or it's we the city looking at investing public dollars into some certain improvements within the neighborhood, or whether it might be the Parks Department who's looking at doing parks improvements, or maybe we're doing some hike and bike trails because we're looking at doing better connectivity or roadway infrastructure improvements. This policy document will lay the foundation for us to be able to make subsequent decisions as it relates to the future of this portion of our community. And then also, timing and accountability. So the other thing that's important that when we work on these area plans, so I mentioned we'll have a list of implementation items or action items that we'll need to work on. We'll identify if those are short-term, mid-term, long-term. We'll put some timelines associated with what do we mean by short, mid, and long. And then also we will identify who are key parties that should be helping us move forward that objective, whether it's the City of Denton, maybe it's the Housing Authority, maybe it's DISD, it could be some of the nonprofit organizations that are within our community, but we start to work to partner with and identify who needs to be able to take the lead, and then educating them and getting them the ability to be able to move that task forward. So, but timing and accountability is really important as part of these. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this plan will apply to the southeast part of the community. One of the key things that we will need to do on the early onset of this project is identifying what we believe the boundaries of Southeast Denton to be. Right now, we drew general boundaries based upon some feedback from some other our comprehensive planning work that we've done and feedback that we've received from council and the commission. We estimate it's roughly 600 acres. That's why we're not necessarily small, right? That's why we're just an area plan. It's roughly, right now, we estimate roughly 1,100 parcels. And again, the reason why we're going to do this is because of interest from the community, the opportunity to build a partnership with this particular portion of the city, and to be able to identify areas where we want to maintain that existing character, But also, we know we have development pressures in Southeast Denton. I know the Robertson zoning case had come up previously with the fourplexes. A lot of discussion associated with given that time, and obviously that even came up this evening. We know as areas evolve within the community that we will have development pressures. And so when I say development pressures, we will have folks that are looking at acquiring properties and developing within this part of the community, just like we have development pressures happening in other parts of the community. But this plan will help us identify where the areas we want to protect, where are the areas that we're interested in allowing change to occur. So if we have folks that are looking at investing within the community, then we can steer them in the direction of these are the areas that this community as a whole has identified where they want to influence change. And then also, the other reason why we want to do the area plan is we want to identify and capitalize on the existing assets that we have within the neighborhood. And then also, again, because of council's strong interest in directing this and having this be the priority for this. I believe that's my last slide. So I think the next one, oh, schedule, sorry, thank you. So right now, as I mentioned earlier, we're working on, we will select a consultant to be able to partner with us. It is very important that we partner with the right consultant team to be able to assist my team and be able to do all the work that's needed to develop the Southeast area plan. I would love to be able to do it all in-house, but I don't have the manpower to be able to do it all in-house because of the multiple priorities. You know, you saw the slide that talked about the planning team, all the different hats and responsibilities that we have that we do for the city. But our key focus is finding the right consultant team to partner with to be able to help us in doing the work with on this area plan. We anticipate that we'll kick this project off somewhere in December, January timeframe. There may be some analysis work that we're doing on the front end that we'll probably do during the holidays, but we won't kick off the public engagement during the middle of the holidays. That I can assure you of, because you want to have the opportunity to spend time with your loved ones and your friends during the holidays. And I know I will get low turnout at public meetings if I try to have something right before Christmas or around Thanksgiving. But we anticipate right after the first of the year is when we would kick the project off formally. We anticipate that this could be an 8-month to 10-month project. So I ask you for your patience, your commitment to the project, because we will need that as we work through this. We will have several public engagement sessions throughout. What those engagement sessions look like might be from a variety of in-person meetings to, for those people that like to be able to do things online, we might do some online engagement activities, and you can participate in anything and everything that we put forth. But again, like I said earlier, the public engagement aspect of this is going to be such a huge asset to this project, and hence why I want your participation on that. If we can achieve this project in a shorter amount of time, by all means, we'll try and do so because we want to be respectful of your time. But we know with the analysis that needs to be done, the engagement, putting forth recommendations for the community to consider, for you to give us feedback on, working with the Planning and Zoning Commission, our city council members, we'll have touch points throughout the project with them on that. So hence why these projects have the time frame associated with that. But once we get this adopted, then the next part comes the implementation phase. And that's when we work on all of those action items that we've put forth within this vision document. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, where we start talking about, okay, what are the next steps that we're doing? If we need financial resources that are allocated towards certain improvements that need to be done within the community, then that document gives me the basis to go before council and say, hey, council, we need these certain financial resources allocated to these projects. These projects were a priority recommendation coming out of this Southeast Denton area plan. So it gives us that support to be able to go ask and beg for money, and hopefully they agree to in the budget process. So, because the projects that I'm asking for funding, I'm competing against the Parks Department, the Fire Department, the Police Department, the libraries, all DME, all organizations. So anyway, but that helps us be able to advocate for the community. So I know I've given you a lot of information, and I've talked a lot. Councilmember Beck has given me the raised eyebrows, but nonetheless, they know I'm passionate about planning. You should have some of the conversations we had when we were working through the adoption of the comprehensive plan in the mobility plan. We had some fabulous conversations with the group. But with that, I'll be quiet. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you for your time. My apologies if I went a little long, but I really appreciate your attention. So thank you so much.
And you said a lot, first of all. You said a lot. So don't be alarmed if a lot of us missed a lot of your information, because you covered a lot of information, you covered a lot of ground. But I just wanted to clarify, because in the beginning you were saying zoning is already decided a lot based on city plans and city ordinances. So can zoning be changed based on the citizens?
Absolutely. So one of the things that when we evaluate zoning, we are tasked with, that we have to evaluate it if it's consistent with our comprehensive plan. That direction comes from state law, all right? So when we have the zoning case working its way throughout wherever it is within the community, we evaluate that zoning to see is it consistent with our adopted plans that we have for the community. So the comprehensive plan, that's the first place we look. But also it's based upon public engagement and feedback. If the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan policies, then our elected officials and appointed officials should be approving the project because it's consistent. And again, that direction comes from state law. Does that always happen? No, not necessarily. We've had some projects that have technically been consistent with our comprehensive planning policies, but because of the public engagement and the fee that was provided, ultimately City Council chose to not approve the project. I can think of one where development was wanting to ask for taller height associated with their project. Some of it was consistent with some of our policies, but at the end of the day, the council chose to approve it. I can think of another project, the Woodrow Wilson SUP. We had a lot of folks express concern regarding the outcome associated with that project. How would that influence or impact the city? That request was consistent with all of our land use policies and our comprehensive planning policies, so City Council ended up approving that request. But I think as a result of the neighborhood meeting that we had and the additional comments received during the public hearing process, it allowed us to be able to address some of the concerns that were associated with it.
I brought that up because you had said something about a grocery store in this area, and I remember and those of you who've been here all your life, you can tell me if I was wrong, there used to be more local businesses that were in the Southeast Denton community. What if local business people wanted to open up more businesses? Is that something that's open to happen, or is it just shut down to happening here? No,
absolutely. They're allowed to be able to do so. So when I was talking about zoning earlier, so zoning district will specify what uses are allowed within that district. So if a grocery store use is allowed in that zoning district, it doesn't matter if it's a small locally owned business or a Kroger, an H-E-B, or whomever wanting to go and locate it. Grocery store is a grocery store from a land use standpoint. So it has, the zoning doesn't specifically call it has to be small shop, mom and pop, unless we put a restriction on the square footage size of it. But the zoning will, if it allows for a grocery store use, then the grocery store can open regardless of the size and scale of it, provided that it still has to meet the additional development standards that we have in place. So if I have a regulation that says it cannot be any more than, let's say, 4,000 square feet in size, anybody can open up the grocery store as long as it doesn't exceed 4,000 square feet in size. It doesn't matter if you're operating it, I'm owning and operating it, or Kroger's owning and operating it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I guess the one other thing, you're right, I did cover a lot of information, and my apologies for that. But when we kick off this project, we will have another introductory meeting. We will talk more about project specifics. So this will not be the first time you hear from me. I can assure you of that. So
within the comprehensive plan in Southeast Denton, within the comprehensive plan of Southeast Denton, they said that it's a viable area for multifamily units.
Yeah, so our comprehensive plan does acknowledge that additional housing would be appropriate within the southeast part of the community, just like it has it in the northeast part of the community, the southwest, and probably not so much in the northwest, because the northwest portion of the community we designated as predominantly industrial type uses. So we would not want residential uses, or we would not support residential uses trying to locate in an area that we've identified for industrial.
Multifamily, you said.
So multifamily.
Apartments.
Right.
Up to a certain unit, maybe it could be a fourplex, or you say comprehensive plan for Southeast Denton would be, we would allow 23 apartments. No, you would say no, you probably would say no.
Well, so keep in mind, so the area plan will provide recommendations where single family residential uses would occur, maybe a moderate density use like multifamily or fourplexes or whatever that may be. But it could recommend where additional residential uses are located within the southeast part of town. And keep in mind, it's going to generally locate, it'll be a little more parcel specific compared to the comprehensive plan, but it's not going to be to the level of detail as the zoning map will be. Okay? So, but it could acknowledge that, and again, based upon community feedback, that we're okay with additional multifamily or fourplexes, or we want single family neighborhoods, or maybe we want to allow something in between with townhomes, that it will acknowledge these are the kinds of land uses that we want to have happen within the community, but if multifamily is going to locate in the community, then these are the areas within Southeast Denton where we would be more supportive of that type of land use occurring. So it helps provide that finer grain and level of direction than what our Denton 2040 comprehensive plan provides. Any other questions?
And I think that that's one of the things that, you all are gonna be going through as you're having those meetings come along. It's gonna start coming up more and more often, to kind of pinpoint what's what. I'm really excited about, this particular process, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But I just wanted to say I'm really excited about getting us as a community to this point. Because there's so much happening outside of Southeast Denton neighborhood, and it's just exploding. So thank you all for bringing that, and I'm ready.
Well, and what I would add is, you know, one of the reasons why the council was interested in working on this plan, and especially the planning team, is we're all about identifying what's important to the community, but how do we move the community moving forward? We also recognize that our history is challenged with respect to back, Mr. Hunt referred to back in 1922 with the relocation of the Black community to Southeast Denton. We understand that, and we acknowledge that, and so we don't want history to necessarily repeat itself, right? But we want to be able to learn from that. And so hence why it's very important that we understand from the community what your goals are for your area, your community, and how you want it to evolve longer term. So like I said, that 5, 10, 20 years into the future. So we realize that there may be some hard conversations that we have to have, but at the end of the day, it's all about how do we move the community forward? How do we partner together in the best interest of the southeast part of the community?
Right.
Yeah, I don't have a question, I just have a comment for the group. I think one of the most important things we need to really look at is the boundaries that we consider Southeast Denton. Because, you know, you look at that, I would hate for us, for something to come right on the outside of the boundary and we get left out because we're not inside. You're 40 feet from that boundary, so what you think, that doesn't matter to us. If it's within 300 or 400 feet and it may impact this community, then I want to know about it. I don't want to be told, well, you're on the wrong side of the street or you're across the street. I don't want that. We should never hear that again in this meeting. So if we can find out where the boundaries are, I think we'll have a better understanding of, we'll be more involved. Because I don't think anybody really knows where the true boundaries are in Southeast. I just don't want to
get the boundaries set up for us.
Yeah, I just don't want to be left out and being told, well, that had nothing to do with you. Because it's not within Southeast Denton when nobody really knows. Because Southeast Denton has grown, so, and it's, trust me, it's not a square.
Well, and Steve, that's why it's very important to understand from the neighborhood what the boundaries are. And so that will be part of the exercise. And I would have been remiss, I should have noted, Julie is going to be our project manager and Mia is going to be assisting them. So you will get to know these two ladies very, very well, in addition to others on my team.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes,
I don't know if this was brought up in the meeting at all. Right up there on Morris Street and Duncan Street, those trees that was torn down, what's going on right there at the corner?
I don't know that one off the top of my head, but tell you what, why don't you, Julie or Mia or Cameron and Haley, they might be able to better address that, and we can look that
Before
up.
the railroad track.
Yeah, we heard it's gonna be a park, we want to know.
I asked about, I don't know what they're building there,
Oh,
but
yeah?
I asked about them cutting down the trees.
Okay.
Yeah, so they gave us reports that because that house is there, if a house is there, you can basically cut down all the trees, unfortunately. And so that empty lot didn't have many trees, but yeah, I don't know what they're planning to build there,
Oh, okay.
but we're in their rights to cut the trees,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And if there's no more questions, and Ms. Johnson, one final announcement, there's still pizza left, so if you need pizza before you have to leave.
You don't want to do
I was gonna say, my team is happy to be here afterwards, if you have any additional questions of it, happy to stick around, so thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.